I heard my wife's secret engagement announcement on a popular local podcast. It started like any other Tuesday. The coffee machine was sputtering, that familiar wheeze that meant it was on its last legs, much like my patience before 7 a.m. Outside, the sky was that washed-out gray that passes for morning in late October, the kind that makes you question whether spring will ever actually show up again. I was halfway through scrolling through the usual morning drivel on my phone, news headlines I'd forget in an hour, endless social media updates from people I barely knew, when I caught the tail end of a local radio show, Midday Musings with Maria. Usually, I'd have it on low in the background, a familiar hum to drown out the silence that sometimes felt too loud. But today, Maria's voice, usually so upbeat and bubbly, had a different cadence, a tremor almost. And then, what she said, it hit me like a physical blow. And before we go to break, she chirped, a little too brightly, a huge congratulations to our very own producer, Sarah Jenkins, on her recent engagement. We're all so thrilled for you, Sarah, and can't wait to see that beautiful ring sparkle on air. My hands went cold. Sarah Jenkins, my wife, Sarah. My brain did this weird thing, like it was trying to catch up to itself, to process what I just heard. Engagement? Who was she engaged to? The question echoed in the sudden, deafening silence of my apartment. I was staring at my phone, the screen still showing some generic meme, but all I saw was Sarah's face, her laugh, the way her eyes crinkled when she was genuinely happy. The ring. She hadn't said anything about a ring, not a word. And the fact that it was announced on a podcast, a popular one at that, a show she actually listened to sometimes, it felt like a deliberate public declaration of something I was completely excluded from. It was like finding out your own house had been sold and you were the last to know. I fumbled for the power button, killing the screen, the silence now a roaring in my ears. My heart was doing this frantic drum solo against my ribs, each beat a question, an accusation. I needed to hear it again. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers clumsy, adrenaline surging through me. I pulled up the podcast app, scrolled back through the recent episodes, my breath catching in my throat with every tap. Midday Musings with Maria. There it was. Episode from today. I hit play, and the familiar intro music started, Maria's cheerful voice welcoming listeners. I skipped ahead, my thumb hovering over the playback bar, my stomach churning. And then, there it was again. A huge congratulations to our very own producer, Sarah Jenkins, on her recent engagement. We're all so thrilled for you, Sarah, and can't wait to see that beautiful ring sparkle on air. The same words, but this time I was actively listening, dissecting every syllable. There was no mistaking it. Sarah Jenkins, my Sarah, engaged. To whom, though?
That was the gaping, terrifying void. Look, I know this is probably not the kind of story you were expecting when you clicked on this. Maybe you're here for some lighthearted gossip, a quick laugh. But stick with me, okay? Because this is my life, and it's messy, and it's real. And if you've ever felt blindsided, if you've ever had your world tilt on its axis, then you might understand. If you're feeling it, if this resonates with you at all, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, give this a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and definitely leave a comment below. Let me know what you think, what you would do. Your support means everything. My apartment. This place. It's usually a sanctuary, or at least it was. 2 bedrooms, decent square footage for the city, overlooking a park that turns a stunning shade of gold in the fall. We'd picked it out together, Sarah and I, 2 years ago. Remember that feeling, the excitement of nesting, of building a life, of having a space that was ours. We painted the living room that deep navy blue she loved, the one that made the sunlight look like it was coming through an aquarium. The kitchen counters, granted, a splurge, but we said we deserved it. Our wedding photo, framed in silver, sat on the bookshelf. Sarah's smile, bright and carefree, my arm around her. Everything about this place screamed ours. Or at least it used to. Now it felt like a stage set, a beautiful lie. The silence that had descended after I'd heard the announcement was thick, suffocating. I walked into the kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd planned our future over late-night takeout and cheap wine, where we'd celebrated promotions and commiserated over bad days. The coffee machine sat there, still wheezing, a monument to my oblivious routine. I opened the fridge, staring blankly at the contents. Yogurt, milk, a half-eaten carton of Chinese leftovers from last night. Normal, everything looked normal. But it wasn't. Nothing was normal anymore. Sarah wouldn't be home for another 3 hours. That's what the calendar on the fridge said, the one we'd meticulously marked with appointments, date nights, holidays, her work schedule. She was a producer for that local podcast, Midday Musings. I'd heard her talk about it, the long hours, the demanding personalities of the hosts, the constant pressure to deliver engaging content. I was proud of her drive, of her success. She was smart, ambitious, and genuinely good at what she did. I'd always thought, that's my girl. And she was. She was my wife. We'd been married for 5 years, together for 7. 7 years of shared jokes, late-night talks, the comfortable silences that only come with deep familiarity. 7 years of building something real. Or so I believed. The first crack, I suppose, was subtle. So subtle that I dismissed it, brushed it off as stress, as her just being busy. About 6 months ago, she'd started working later.
Not every day, but often enough that it became noticeable. Big project, she'd say. Her voice a little too quick, a little too breezy. Deadlines are killer this quarter. I'd nod, offer to make dinner, bring her coffee. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was Sarah. My Sarah. Her voice dropping to a near whisper when I walked by. "Who are you talking to?" I'd ask, casually. "Just work," she'd reply, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "The station manager. He's a nightmare." I'd accepted that too. The media world, I figured, was full of demanding bosses and high-pressure situations. Then came the weekends. She'd always been a homebody, a lover of lazy Sundays with books and board games. But lately, she'd developed a sudden passion for networking events and industry conferences. Entire Saturdays spent away. She'd come back, her eyes bright, full of stories about meeting new people, making connections. I'd listen, try to be enthusiastic, but a knot of unease would tighten in my stomach. She'd always been social, sure, but this felt different. This felt evasive. And the distance, it had started to creep in, a slow, insidious chill. Little things at first, the way she'd stop sharing her day with me, the way our conversations became more superficial, revolving around logistics and obligations. We'd sit across from each other at dinner, both on our phones, the silence punctuated by the clinking of cutlery. Intimacy, the kind that used to flow effortlessly between us, felt like a forgotten language. I'd try to initiate it, a hand on her leg under the table, a spontaneous hug, but she'd often flinch or pull away with a tight smile, murmuring about being tired. Tired. That was the new constant. She was always tired. The engagement ring. That was the real kicker. I'd noticed she wasn't wearing hers anymore. Not my ring, the simple gold band I'd slipped onto her finger at the courthouse, the one that represented our commitment, our promises. I'd asked her about it once, about a month ago. "Honey, where's your wedding ring?" I'd said, trying to keep my voice light, playful. She'd been chopping vegetables, her back to me. She'd frozen for a split second, then turned, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "Oh, you know," she'd said, wiping her hands on her apron. "I lost it. I think it might have fallen off at the gym. I'm so upset. I'll have to get a new one." Lost it. She'd lost the symbol of our marriage, and she hadn't mentioned it since. I'd offered to take her to a jeweler to get a replacement, but she'd brushed me off. "It's fine for now," she'd said. "I'll deal with it later." Later. That was another recurring theme. But this podcast announcement, this was beyond subtle. This was a grand, public declaration of a future that didn't include me.
My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of my life, trying to find the point where it had all gone so horribly wrong. Was there someone else? Who was this mystery fiancé? Was it someone from her work? Someone she'd met at one of these clandestine networking events? The rage began to simmer beneath the surface, hot and corrosive. How could she? How could she do this to me, to us, to everything we'd built? I walked into our bedroom, the air heavy with a silence that felt different from the usual comfortable quiet. It felt accusatory. The bed was neatly made, a testament to her morning routine before she left. Her side of the closet was impeccably organized, a stark contrast to my own chaotic jumble. Her perfume, a subtle floral scent, still lingered in the air. It used to be comforting. Now, it smelled like deception. I looked at her dresser, at the collection of jewelry laid out neatly. Earrings, necklaces, bracelets, but no ring, no wedding ring. And then, my eyes landed on a small velvet box tucked away in the corner, almost hidden. It was a deep midnight blue, the kind of box you'd see in a jewelry store window. My blood ran cold. I'd seen that box before. It had been on her dresser a few weeks ago, sitting out in the open. I'd asked about it then too. "What's this, honey?" I'd said, pointing. She'd snatched it up, her face flushing. "Oh, nothing," she'd stammered. "Just something I found, cleaning out old things." She'd shoved it into her purse and taken it with her. Found it, cleaning out old things. What a load of crap. My hands were trembling as I reached for the box. It felt heavy, substantial. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a satin cushion, was a diamond ring. Not a huge rock, but undeniably beautiful, elegant, expensive. It wasn't my ring. It wasn't the ring I'd given her. This was an engagement ring, a new engagement ring. And the velvet box, it was the same color as the podcast's branding. Maria's podcast, Sarah's podcast. The implications crashed down on me, each one a hammer blow to my chest. She was engaged to someone else, and she hadn't told me. She'd let me believe we were still married, still a couple, while she was planning her future with another man. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it was hard to breathe. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the velvet box still open in my lap, the diamond glinting mockingly under the soft bedroom light. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The carefully constructed facade of our life, the memories, the shared dreams, it all felt like a hollow shell. Who was he? How long had this been going on? How much of our life together had been a lie? The questions swirled, a vortex of pain and confusion. The silence in the room was no longer just an absence of sound. It was a deafening roar of unspoken truths, of broken promises. The podcast was still playing in my mind. Maria's cheerful voice announcing Sarah's engagement. A cruel, ironic soundtrack to my unraveling reality. And then, a chilling thought, colder than the rest, slithered into my mind. If she was announcing her engagement on the podcast, if everyone at work knew, how much longer had she planned to keep this from me? Was there a plan? Was there a right time she was waiting for? Or was she just going to let me find out when she walked out the door? The sheer audacity of it, the calculated deception, was almost more than I could bear. I closed my eyes. The image of the diamond ring burned into my eyelids. I was adrift, lost in a sea of my own making, a stranger in my own life. The sound of keys in the lock jolted me. Sarah, she was home. My heart leaped into my throat, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I quickly closed the velvet box, shoving it back into its corner on the dresser, trying to appear as if I hadn't been rummaging through her things. But my hands were still shaking, my face probably pale. The bedroom door creaked open, and there she was, silhouetted against the hallway light. Her work bag slung over her shoulder, her usual tired smile in place. "Hey, honey," she said, her voice soft. "Long day." She walked towards me, her gaze sweeping over me, then landing on the open jewelry box. Her smile faltered. "Oh," she said, her voice suddenly tight. "You were looking for something?" My eyes met hers. The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusations and the weight of everything I now knew. The air crackled with tension, a silent battle commencing, and I knew with a chilling certainty that nothing would ever be the same. The cliffhanger wasn't just the podcast announcement anymore. It was this moment, standing here with her, the truth a tangible, suffocating presence between us, and the dawning realization that the hardest part was just about to begin. Just looking for my watch, I lied, my voice rough, trying to mask the tremor I knew was there. My mind was a hurricane, desperately trying to anger itself. I couldn't let her see, not yet,
Not until I figured out what the hell was going on. She nodded, but her eyes lingered on the dresser, on the spot where the blue velvet box had been. There was a flicker of something in her expression, annoyance, fear. I couldn't tell. She'd always been so good at hiding her emotions when it suited her. "Well, it's not there," she said, her tone a little clipped. She walked past me, heading towards the closet. The familiar scent of her perfume, once a comfort, now felt like a sickly sweet coating over something rotten. I watched her, my breath held tight in my chest, waiting for the next domino to fall. Did you hear that podcast today?" I blurted out, the words escaping before I could stop them. My stomach twisted into knots. This was it, the moment of truth, or at least the first step towards it.
She paused, her hand on a blouse, and turned slowly. Her expression was guarded, a practiced blankness I'd seen too many times lately. "Which podcast?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Midday Musings," I said, my gaze fixed on her face, searching for any tell, any sign of guilt or surprise. "Maria's show." A beat of silence, then a small, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, that one. No, I haven't had a chance to catch up on it yet. I've been swamped." She turned back to the closet, her movements a little too deliberate, a little too fast. "Really?" I pushed, my voice gaining an edge I couldn't control. "Because I heard something interesting on it this morning." I took a step closer, my shadow falling over her. "Something about an engagement." She froze again. This time, the hesitation was more pronounced. Her shoulders tensed. She didn't turn around. "An engagement?" she echoed, her voice barely a whisper. "Who?" This was it. I could feel it. The air in the room was thick with anticipation, with the unspoken weight of her secret. I saw her fingers tighten on the fabric of the blouse. She was trapped. "Sarah," I said, my voice low and steady, each word deliberate. "Who are you engaged to?" The silence stretched, suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat, a frantic drum solo against the quiet. I saw her shoulders sag, her posture crumbling. Slowly, she turned to face me, her eyes downcast. Her face was pale, etched with a weariness that went beyond a long day at work. It's complicated," she finally murmured, her voice barely audible. "Complicated?" I repeated, the word a harsh bark. "Complicated is having to replace the coffee machine. Complicated is deciding what to order for dinner. This, Sarah?" I gestured vaguely between us. "This is not complicated. This is betrayal." She flinched at the word, and for a fleeting second I saw a flicker of the woman I'd married, the hurt, the vulnerability, but it was quickly masked by a hard, defensive shell. "You don't understand," she said, her voice gaining a little more strength, a brittle defiance creeping in. "Then make me understand," I demanded, my voice rising. "I heard my wife announce her engagement on a public radio show. You lost your wedding ring months ago, and now you're wearing a new diamond. And you're telling me it's complicated?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but they didn't seem to be tears of remorse. They looked more like tears of frustration. "You've been distant for months," she said, her voice trembling. "You're never home, and when you are, you're always on your phone. We don't talk anymore. We don't connect. You act like I'm invisible." "Invisible?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "I thought we were building a life together. I thought we were a team. And then I find out through a podcast announcement that you're getting married to someone else. How does that make me invisible, Sarah? That makes me a fool."
"It's not like that," she whispered, her voice cracking. It's been happening for a while. We were drifting apart, and I met someone." "You met someone?" I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "And instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix what we had, you decided to find someone new, and then you announce your engagement on the radio?" The sheer audacity of it was staggering. It was like she was trying to rub it in my face. He's different," she said, looking away, her gaze unfocused. "He listens. He pays attention. He makes me feel seen." "Seen?" I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. "And I don't make you feel seen? After 7 years together, after everything we've been through, I don't make you feel seen?" My voice was shaking now, not with fear, but with a cold fury. "Who is he, Sarah? Tell me his name." She remained silent, her jaw set. The defiance was back, stronger than ever. She wasn't going to give me an easy answer. She wasn't going to make this easy. "I can't," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "Not yet. It's not fair to him, and it's not fair to you. I need time." "Time?" I stepped back, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over me. Time for what? For her to plan her wedding? For her to figure out how to break the news to me that she was leaving me for another man? You think you can just blow up our lives and then ask for time? What about my time, Sarah? What about the time I've invested in this marriage? The love, the trust, the future I thought we had? She finally looked at me, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of sadness and something that looked like relief? As if the burden of the secret was finally lifting, even if it was at the expense of my heart. "I know this is hard," she said, her voice soft but firm. "And I am sorry, truly sorry, but I can't keep living a lie. And I can't pretend anymore that we can fix this." "A lie?" I repeated, the word echoing in the room. "Our entire marriage has been a lie? Everything we've shared, everything we've built, it was all just a lie to you?" She shook her head, tears finally streaming down her face. "No, not all of it, but it became one. For me." I stared at her, my mind reeling. The woman standing in front of me was a stranger. The Sarah I knew, the Sarah I loved, would never have done this. She would have fought for us. She would have talked to me. She wouldn't have found solace in another man's arms and then casually announced her engagement on a podcast. "So what now?" I asked, my voice hollow. "You're just going to walk away? You're just going to leave me after everything without even a conversation?" She took a deep breath, and I braced myself for what she was about to say. I think we need to be honest with each other," she said, her gaze unwavering. "And that means admitting that this isn't working anymore. For either of us." "For me?" I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "How do you know it's not working for me? Did you ask me? Or did you just assume that because you found someone new, I'm just supposed to disappear?" "You've been unhappy for a long time, Mark," she said, her voice gentle, almost pitying. "I've seen it. You've been withdrawn. You've been distant. We've been living separate lives under the same roof. This isn't just about me finding someone else. It's about the fact that we lost each other long before that." The words stung, but there was a sliver of truth in them, a truth I had been desperately trying to ignore. I had been unhappy. I had been distant. But I hadn't realized how much until she said it. And I certainly hadn't realized she saw it, or that she had taken that unhappiness as a signal to move on with someone else. "So, this podcast announcement," I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. "Was that your way of telling me? A little public relations stunt to soften the blow?" She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I wanted to tell you in person, Mark. I really did. But I was scared. And I knew how much it would hurt you." "Scared?" I echoed, incredulous. "You were scared of telling me? But you weren't scared of getting engaged to another man? You weren't scared of betraying me? Of lying to me for months?" The anger was building again, a tidal wave threatening to engulf me. "It wasn't a lie," she insisted, her voice rising. "It was a separation, a silent separation. And when I met him, things changed. I felt alive again, and I realized that I deserved to be happy too." "You deserved to be happy," I repeated, the words feeling like sandpaper in my throat. "And what about me? What about my happiness? Did you think about that at all?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "I know I've hurt you, Mark, and I'm truly sorry for that. But I can't go back. I can't undo what's happened." "So this is it then?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "This is how it ends? With a podcast announcement and a confession of infidelity?" She nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. I think it has to."
The finality of her words hit me with the force of a physical blow. I felt myself sinking, the floor dropping out from beneath me. The life I'd known, the woman I'd loved, the future I'd envisioned, it all lay shattered around me. I looked at her, this woman who was once my everything, and I saw only a stranger. The confusion, the pain, the anger, it was all a maelstrom inside me. Who is he, Sarah? I asked again, my voice a desperate plea, the need to know overriding everything else. Just tell me his name. She hesitated, her gaze flickering towards the door, as if looking for an escape. His name is David, she finally admitted, her voice barely audible. David Miller. David Miller. The name meant nothing to me, yet it felt like a brand seared into my very soul. David Miller, the man who was going to marry my wife.
The man who had stolen her away. David Miller, I repeated, tasting the name. Where did you meet him? At a work event, she said, her voice small. A few months ago, you were out of town on that business trip. The business trip, of course. The one where I'd been so stressed about work, so focused on the quarterly reports, I hadn't even realized how much I was neglecting her. The irony was a bitter pill. So, you've been seeing him for months, I said, the realization dawning on me with sickening clarity. All those late nights, all those networking events, it was all for him. She didn't deny it. She just stood there, her silence a deafening confirmation. And the ring? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Where did you get that ring, Sarah? The one that isn't mine. She wrung her hands, her gaze darting around the room. David gave it to me, she whispered. He proposed a few weeks ago. I was going to tell you, I swear. I didn't know how. A few weeks ago. So the engagement wasn't just an announcement. It was a commitment, a done deal. And I, her husband, had been kept in the dark. The rage, which had been simmering, now erupted. You didn't know how? I roared, the sound echoing in the small bedroom. You didn't know how to tell your husband that you were engaged to another man, that you were planning to leave him for another man? How about you just say, Mark, I'm engaged to David Miller and I'm leaving you. Was that too complicated for you? She flinched, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Mark. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't cut it, Sarah, I said, my voice raw with pain. Sorry doesn't erase the months of lies. Sorry doesn't bring back the trust you've shattered. Sorry doesn't give me back the future I thought we had. I walked past her, out of the bedroom, my legs feeling like lead. I needed air. I needed to escape this suffocating reality. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door, the familiar jingle a stark contrast to the chaos in my head. Where are you going? She called after me, her voice laced with panic. I don't know, I said, not looking back. But I can't be here right now. I walked out of the apartment, the door slamming shut behind me. The city lights blurred through my tear-filled eyes. I didn't know where I was going, or what I was going to do. All I knew was that my life, the life I'd painstakingly built, had imploded in a matter of hours. And the epicenter of that destruction was the woman I loved. The woman who was now engaged to another man. The betrayal was a gaping wound, and I had no idea how I was going to survive it. The cliffhanger wasn't just her engagement. It was my own complete and utter breakdown. What would happen now? Would I be able to salvage anything from the wreckage? Or was this the end of me? The night air was a cold slap against my face, a welcome shock to the numbness that had begun to creep in. I drove aimlessly, the city a kaleidoscope of neon and shadow.
Each passing car a reminder of the life I thought I had, the life that was now just gone. Sarah's words replayed in my head, a broken record of betrayal and hollow apologies. I felt alive again. I deserved to be happy too. Happiness. Was that all it came down to? A fleeting feeling, a chemical reaction, enough to dismantle years of shared history, of promises whispered in the dark, of a future meticulously planned. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. I remembered that feeling, the one she claimed to have found with David Miller. The feeling of being seen, of being alive. Had I ever made her feel that way? Or had I become so complacent, so entrenched in the routine of our marriage, that I'd allowed her to fade into the background? The thought was a fresh wave of nausea, a different kind of guilt, but no less potent than the anger. I ended up at an all-night diner, the kind with vinyl booths and the perpetual smell of stale coffee and fried onions. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Brenda, poured me a mug of coffee without asking. It was bitter, scalding, and exactly what I needed. I stared into its dark depths, seeing my own reflection warped and broken. David Miller. The name still felt like a phantom limb, an ache where something vital used to be. Work event. Months ago. Out of town. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity, painting a picture of calculated deceit. While I was away, chasing career milestones, she was elsewhere, forging a connection that would ultimately sever ours. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over Sarah's contact. What was there to say? Hi, just checking in to see if you've booked the caterer for your wedding to David Miller. The sarcasm felt like a defense mechanism, a shield against the raw vulnerability that threatened to consume me. I deleted her number. Then I scrolled through my contacts, looking for someone, anyone to talk to. But who? My parents lived on the other side of the country, and explaining this, it felt impossible. My friends? They'd known us as a couple, the solid unit, the envy of many. How could I tell them that the foundation had crumbled, that the house had been secretly dismantled from within? Hours later, as the first hint of dawn painted the sky a bruised purple, I was still there, the diner emptying out, Brenda wiping down tables with a weary rhythm. I hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. My mind was a battlefield, strategy meetings of anger, retreats of despair, and desperate counteroffensives of denial. I kept replaying the scene in the bedroom. Her confession, the tears, the strange mixture of sadness and relief. Relief. That was the word that kept snagging in my thoughts. Relief at being caught. Relief at the burden being lifted. Or relief that she was finally free to pursue her own happiness, even if it meant shattering mine.
I finally drove home. The apartment, silent, expectant. The bedroom was exactly as we'd left it, a tableau of our shattered life. Her side of the bed was still unmade, the indentation of her body a ghost of her presence. The blue velvet box was nowhere to be seen. I walked into the living room, the space we'd once filled with laughter and shared dreams, now feeling vast and empty. I sat on the couch, the same couch where we'd had countless movie nights, where she'd fallen asleep on my shoulder, where we'd made plans for the future. Now it felt like a monument to my own naivete. I picked up a framed photo from the coffee table. It was from our honeymoon, a candid shot of us on a beach, her laughing, her arm around me. Her eyes sparkled, her smile was genuine, unrestrained. Who was that woman? Where had she gone? And who was this woman who could so calmly announce her engagement to another man on public radio? The disconnect was jarring, a chasm between memory and reality. The silence in the apartment was broken by the chirping of my phone. It was Sarah. A text message. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. Finally, I tapped it open. Mark, I'm so sorry. I need to see you. Can we talk, please? Talk.
what was left to say. The words had been said, the dam had broken. But a morbid curiosity, a desperate need for closure, for something more than just the phantom ache, compelled me to reply. "Where?" I typed, my fingers clumsy. "My parents' place. They're here for a few days. I want them to be here. It's easier that way." Her parents, of course. She wanted a united front, a witness to her righteous departure. It was all so calculated. The rage flared again, a hot, consuming fire. But beneath it, a hollow weariness. I didn't have the energy to fight anymore. I just wanted it to be over. I drove to her parents' house, a familiar suburban colonial, manicured lawn, American flags waving gently in the breeze. It was the epitome of the life we were supposed to be building. Her car was in the driveway. Her parents' car was there too. I parked across the street, the engine idling, my gaze fixed on the front door. I imagined her inside, rehearsing her lines, bracing herself for the final act. Finally, I got out of the car. The walk across the street felt like a mile. Each step was heavy, weighted with the unknown. I rang the doorbell, the chime echoing in the quiet street. The door opened, and there she was, Sarah. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of it all. "Mark," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "Sarah," I replied, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. She stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. The house smelled of potpourri and old money. Her parents were in the living room, sitting on a plush sofa, their faces a mask of polite concern.
They stood as I entered, her father offering a curt nod, her mother giving me a weak, tight-lipped smile. "Mark, thank you for coming," her mother said, her voice carefully modulated. "Mrs. Peterson," I acknowledged, my gaze immediately finding Sarah's. We sat down, an awkward semicircle of shattered expectations. The silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway. Sarah sat beside me, a palpable distance between us, even though we were inches apart. "Sarah's told us everything, Mark," her father said, his voice firm but not unkind. "It's a difficult situation." "Difficult," I repeated, the word feeling like an understatement of colossal proportions. Sarah finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mark, I know I've hurt you, more than I can ever express, and I'm so sorry, but I can't do this anymore." "Do what, Sarah?" I asked, my voice low, dangerous. "Pretend? Lie? Live a double life?" She flinched. "No. Live a life that wasn't making either of us happy. We've been drifting apart for so long, Mark. You know that. We both know that. And I met David, and he made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Something." My voice was laced with a sarcasm that I couldn't control. "You found something with him that I couldn't give you? After 7 years? After a lifetime of promises?" "It's not about what you couldn't give me, Mark," she said, her voice gaining a little strength. "It's about what we lost. We stopped seeing each other. We stopped connecting. You were always working, always stressed, always somewhere else. And I became invisible. So you found a man who saw you," I said, the words sharp, cutting. "And instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix what was broken, you decided to run off and get engaged to him." "It wasn't running off," she countered, her eyes flashing with a flicker of defiance. "It was finding myself, finding happiness. And I deserved that, Mark. We both do." "And what about me, Sarah?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Did you think about me at all when you were making plans with David? Did you think about the life we had built? The vows we took?" Her parents remained silent, their faces impassive, observing the wreckage. "I did, Mark," she said, her voice softening. "Every single day. That's why this is so hard, because I know I'm hurting you.
And I never wanted to do that. But I can't go back. I can't pretend anymore that we can make this work. So you've made your decision, I stated, the finality of it washing over me. It wasn't a question. It was a painful, undeniable truth. She nodded, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Yes, Mark, I have. I stood up, the room suddenly feeling suffocating. The air was thick with unspoken words, with the ghosts of our shared past. I think I've heard enough, I said, my voice hollow. Her mother stood too. Mark, please, don't leave like this. Let's talk. Let's figure this out.
Figure what out, Mrs. Peterson? I asked, turning to her, my eyes blazing. She's engaged to another man. She's leaving me. What exactly is there left to figure out? Sarah stood up as well, her hand reaching out towards me, then dropping back to her side. Mark, please, she pleaded, don't make this uglier than it has to be. Uglier? I let out a bitter laugh. You want ugly? You want ugly, Sarah? How about the ugliness of finding out your wife is engaged to another man through a damn podcast? How about the ugliness of realizing that the last year, maybe even longer, has been a complete and utter lie? Is that ugly enough for you? I turned and walked towards the door, not looking back. I could feel Sarah's gaze on me, a heavy, suffocating weight. I could hear her parents murmuring softly behind me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The pain was too great, the betrayal too deep. As I walked out of the house, back into the indifferent embrace of the suburban night, I felt a profound sense of loss, not just for the marriage, but for the man I thought I was, the man who believed in love, in fidelity, in a future built on trust. That man was gone, replaced by a hollow shell, a survivor of an emotional catastrophe. I got into my car, the silence a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I started the engine, the rumble a familiar sound in the disorienting quiet. I had no destination, no plan, just the overwhelming need to drive, to put distance between myself and the wreckage. The road ahead was dark, uncertain, and utterly, terrifyingly my own. The final exhale, I realized, wasn't one of relief, but of a profound, soul-deep emptiness. The story wasn't over, but the chapter of my life with Sarah, the one I thought I knew, had just ended with a brutal, unforgiving finality.